Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Welcome to the Global Fleet Summit virtual edition. We are delighted to have participants of all the regions across the globe for this unique event. And this edition of the Global Fleet Summit is really unique, is really special, not only because it will offer on demand content, but also because we are organizing it with the support of Fleet Forum. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce to you my co host for today, Paul Janssen. And Paul is the executive director at Fleet Forum. Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Stephen. And at Fleet Forum, we are really excited about this collaboration with Global Fleet because our shared goal is to really promote a meaningful dialogue between the humanitarian sector and the private sector, because I'm convinced that we both can learn a lot from each other. And that's both for fleet managers, a learning opportunity, but also for suppliers.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for the support. And when we talk about corporate fleet management, like you already did in the first introduction of Fleet Forum, well, we see that topics like cost savings and sustainability are really at the forefront. Many corporate fleets in our industry have embarked already on a significant electrification effort, which sometimes is relatively straightforward, for example, in our region in Europe, but it can pose more challenges in other regions like, for example, Asia Pacific, Africa, Middle East, or Latin America. What are the key priorities that you are seeing in the humanitarian sector?
Well, Stephen, sustainability is definitely important. It's very high on the agenda of humanitarian organizations. It's a bit of a pity that we don't have initiatives like EV100 in our sector. But to address this gap, what we did as Fleet Forum, we've taken the initiatives to promote actually commitments. And I would say the majority of our members signed commitments towards reduction of emissions related to road transport. And at the same time, safety remains a main concern. Our organizations frequently operate in regions that are developing regions. And also many of these regions are still in conflict, unfortunately. So still, our fleet managers really work on sustainability and safety, reduction of emissions and reduction of road crashes. But at the same time, they often struggle with daily operational challenges, such as spare parts availability, availability of fuel, and also have a proper data collection. And these are the kinds of issues that they deal with. And we also see is that suppliers of low and zero emission vehicles or leasing services are still very limited in the regions where we operate.
Okay, well, certainly some of those topics that you already highlighted will come back in the on-demand content that we have prepared for the participants. Now, as mentioned, we will have several sessions related to fleet safety and also sustainability and electrification. And I can imagine that topics related to sourcing techniques will pique the interest of both communities. Procurement specialists are increasingly incorporating new sustainability criteria into their RFQs, including factors like cradle to cradle emissions, isn't it?
Yeah, and well, I would say emission reduction in the humanitarian sector is, like I said, very important. Mm-hmm. But as we see, it's not the easy road to electrification is not always, let's say, the easiest one and very hard to implement. So that means that organizations need to be creative in finding ways to reduce emissions. And you will witness that the creativity of our fleet managers in one of the sessions has titled Avoid, Shift, Improve, where we actually, the first, let's say, route is to avoid using vehicles. And I would say one of the major challenges is what are the most impactful initiatives? And therefore, we really work together with fleet managers from many organizations who all come up with creative solutions to reduce emissions. And only together, by collaborating between the organizations, we can see what is the most impactful initiative that we can all, let's say, build on and replicate.
We talked about some of the initiatives. Now, to control your fleet, you of course need to have also insight into your fleet. And then we come with the topic of data and data management. We all know that sentence, to measure is to know. So what is the current state of data management in the humanitarian sector, Paul? I ask the question also because in commercial fleets, the fleets that we are dealing with global fleet, we often see that the volume of available data is increasing. And it's not always easy for fleet managers to extract the right information from all the data that they can gather from their fleet. So the role of the fleet manager has become much more complex, not only in terms of the categories to manage, but also in terms of the volume of data that the fleet manager will get from the different suppliers. So how is it in your industry, in your sector?
Well, it's no different in the humanitarian sector. You see that telematics and connectivity are in high demand to address complex challenges. And you see more and more organizations decide to use telematics in all of their vehicles. But the main hurdle, like you said, is how do you effectively operationalize these data? And what we see is that many fleet managers just drown in data because the volume is only increasing. And it's getting harder and harder to get the relevant management information that they really need for decision making. And there's actually a serious risk that in the end, fleet managers even decide to stop using all this data because it's just the volume is too high and it's too difficult to really translate that into the right information.
Having the right data is also crucial to implement the right mobility solutions, even solutions that can be an add-on to the company car, to the vehicle that is used, or as an alternative to that vehicle. Without a detailed understanding of your employees' mobility needs, and if you don't have the right data, then of course it will probably not be possible to also provide the right smart and sustainable mobility solutions. Is mobility also a topic within the humanitarian sector?
Yeah, once again, Stephen, there is a very strong parallel between our sectors. Mobility solutions can be a game changer, especially for certain trips. So in the countries where our fleet managers operate, mobility can be sometimes very practical options instead of using traditional vehicles. And what we see, one of the examples is vehicle sharing or trip sharing, which is becoming more and more prominent as a way to provide mobility solutions in a much more sustainable way.
Okay. A final question that I have for you is what we are often hearing when we organize conferences, and possibly also the participants will hear that today during this Global Fleet Summit, is that collaboration is key. And we see that if we would like to progress with professional fleet management, if we would like to really obtain new solutions in our industry, it's necessary that on the fleet manager side and on the fleet supplier side, there is a strong collaboration. Is this also something that you see within the humanitarian sector, the willingness to collaborate?
Yeah, the willingness is definitely there. And but the willingness is one topic. And secondly is how do you deal with that willingness? And what we see, for example, is that, let's say, our community of fleet managers is becoming stronger and stronger in defining the needs, let's say, that they have. Some examples is the availability of low and zero emission vehicles is one, but also a very practical one, like looking at waste management. Many of our organizations operate in environments where it's extremely hard to find suppliers that are able to deal with fleet waste in a sustainable way. And what we see more and more, that suppliers are very open to collaborate, to have a good discussion, to have a dialogue with fleet managers to see how they can support that. So I would say it's still at the beginning of collaboration, but it's a strong willingness. And I really believe that that dialogue between fleet managers and suppliers can accelerate, let's say, a reduction of emissions, especially.
Okay, I can only underwrite what you are saying, Paul, and I think everything that we just have mentioned in this introduction also underlines the importance of the dialogue that we have initiated between our two communities, the corporate fleet world and the humanitarian sector. I think it's really important that also in the future we can look together at how our industry can move forward. And Paul, I'd like really to express my gratitude for your invaluable contribution to the organization of this Global Fleet Summit and for addressing the topics that are really necessary for both the humanitarian sector but also the corporate world. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the Global Fleet Summit virtual experience. And we have lined up for you 12 questions that matter, with, of course, 12 answers that matter. We've made 12 videos available on our platform dedicated to global, regional, and international fleets, and you're free to watch them in an order and a timing that suits you well. We hope you will have a productive and enlightening viewing experience. And if you have any questions to our speakers, please feel free to ask your question within the platform to network and to get value out of this Global Fleet Summit. And last but not least, Global Fleet will continue to organize seminars and conferences also in 2024 with the Global Fleet Summit, the Fleet APAC Summit for the first time, and the Fleet LATAM Summit. Have a nice experience and see you later. Thank you very much.